To WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7 on your dial, and globally at WPVMFM.org. I'm your host, Laura Wagenknecht, president and owner of Mosaic Business Consulting, and you're listening to In Awe, which stands for Inspiring and Advancing Women's Excellence, on every Thursday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. It focuses on all aspects of women in business and all industries of business, and ultimately the driving question will be, how did you come to your success? If you're interested in being on the show, please contact Laura via email at laura@mosaicbusinessconsulting.com. It is my sincere pleasure to introduce to you a special guest, Kimberly Norris. Kim Norris is a senior evaluation specialist for Encompass LLC, a woman-owned small business conducting learning and leadership development, technical assistance, organizational capacity building, and strategic planning and monitoring evaluation, and learning for an international development-focused organizations. Phew, that's insane. Does a lot. Kim has a Bachelor of Science, a Master's of Education from the University of Florida, and a doctorate from the Texas A&M University. She has been both a teaching and practicing evaluation specialist for more than 20 years. In full disclosure, Kim is my sister and my best friend, so I'm thrilled to have her here. So welcome, Kim.
Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Feelings mutual.
And I'm so excited to have you on the show because I've been wanting to have this for a long time. And so why don't you go ahead and wave to your fans?
Thank you so much for having me on the radio program. I think this is wonderful to hear from and learn from all women working and leading in all sorts of fields.
Yeah, thanks. And so before we begin with the interview, I'd like to check in with you about how you see things are, how are things going during this difficult time, both the coronavirus and the recent surge in the anti-racist protests. And I know things are different around the U.S., so I was just kind of wondering, how are things in Maryland and how is that impacting your business and stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question to ask at this time.
Or many questions.
And I guess our business is considered the DC area, so you do feel a bit of the closeness to the politics, even outside of the situation that we're currently facing, associated with George Floyd and everything else. I now live in Annapolis, so I'm a little bit further away from that and I'm in a place that just has a different vibe, best way to put it.
Yeah.
Much less social distancing was happening even when the governor was asking for that, but definitely happening. And so I think Maryland, I don't know about North Carolina at this point, but Maryland is in its second stage. I think even maybe close to third, because even the mall just opened up or something.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
So yes, and so we have stores open, outdoor seating mostly at restaurants, but some indoor seating now. And I say this like not having done most of it because we're still being quite careful just due to family reasons and our own health considerations. So we have been in a bit of a social bubble, like a lot of people I know. We have our bubble of people that we'll hang out with and not go stray much from that. So that's the like sort of physical situation around here. And then work-wise, I mean, I can go into that when we maybe talk about that with work.
Yeah.
But we have transitioned to the COVID-19 situation all remotely. And then, with the situation that we have going on across the world, not only with coronavirus, but also now with the real center focus on racial injustice, particularly with the focus on Black people. Our company is feeling that, moving with that flow, but also really trying to respond to the people within our organization and more globally with our own responses. So I could give some examples, but our company has had multiple meetings, some with only people of color, some with people who choose to meet throughout the organization, some focused on Black Lives Matter, some focused on white privilege,
Hmm.
and others focused on how action that we can take. So the company is trying to have a good response at this point.
Yeah, and
Great to
speaking
see.
of the company, Encompass seems to work with this huge and wide array of services and different fields that you were talking about. And so I'd like to get a bit more of a sense of what Encompass does, and because you're talking about all over the world. So please, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience a little bit more about Encompass, that would be great.
Sure. We work with many different clients on numerous projects at the same time. We're a company of a little over 100 if you count people in the field, and consultants. It gets even higher than that. We have a lot of consultants working on individual projects. Um, we have offices in a few places in the world beyond the DC area. We have people working remotely from Peru, from Chile, from Ethiopia, from
Wow.
Switzerland. And then we also have domestically remote working situations from California to Maine, Massachusetts, North Carolina, in fact, and some others.
Wow.
So, yeah, and so we work with government agencies like the State Department, the USAID, international organizations like the UN and its agencies, the World Food Program, WHO, the World Health Organization, Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, as well as foundations like John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation and Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies. We work in fields ranging from disaster relief and resilience to democracy strengthening in a number of countries, to developing monitoring, evaluation, and learning platforms and systems for different different organizations. And Encompass has been working using remote technologies since its inception 20 years ago. I've been working here for 3 years. But for example, we provide agencies with something called blended learning journeys, where we take them through a number, something that they would want to do. Like they want to improve their overall capacity to conduct evaluations or to strategically invest in their programs. And we can take them through journeys that involve multiple different kinds of platforms like Adobe Connect,
Oh,
Zoom,
wow.
and
Okay.
Skype, WhatsApp, different ways that we can have in-house work and out-of-house work. We can link them with people around the world this way. And we can do large group, small group, individualized, anonymous, short-term and longer-term learning, sharing, and planning work.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, and then much of the work I do is to build teams, collaborate with clients and stakeholders, lead teams in designing and conducting evaluations of programs, and strengthening evaluation capacity for organizations we work with.
Okay. And so you say you work with a lot of teams. How do you build those teams effectively?
There's a lot of learning that goes into
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I should give you one more important piece of background that has to do with Encompass, which I think
Yeah.
helps with the team building. We work on an appreciative inquiry approach. We
Hmm.
use that approach in everything we do internally and externally. We aren't perfect at it. I'm not saying we are perfect at it, but we attempt to apply that wherever we can. And it's something we do with our clients. It's something we do with our key stakeholders. It's something we do internally with our teams. And we work very collaboratively. And I say that it has its pros and cons. Collaborative is amazing for team building. It's really hard to balance it to make sure there's not burnout, because
Right.
when you're working collaboratively, you're also meeting a lot, or
Right.
you have other ways that you're communicating a lot. And responsiveness is really important when you're working collaboratively. So I would say one of the things that we try to do very early on when building teams is we try to find the right people for the right situation. That is, make sure that there's high interest in that. They have the skill set that allows them to at least mostly do that. Maybe there is some capacity building to do. But then they're coming with some skills and certainly interest in doing that work. And I'm talking about our internal organization that we do that with. And then we bring in consultants too to complement that. So, for example, we work a lot of times in areas where we do not have the expertise, and we bring in experts that then complement our knowledge of evaluation or capacity strengthening to then say, well, when it comes to this topic, or when it comes to working in this region of the world, you need to have these ideas in mind too, and we need to be thinking about doing it this way. And they work with us throughout the process.
Mm-hmm.
Often co-leading even, in some of these journeys. So that's number one. The second thing is to have systems and organizations in place. So it's very easy for somebody to move into a role and have the ability to like send in their invoices or know what they're expected to do by a certain date. So the timelines are all clear, and this is all done collaboratively, but also like there are systems we can use so you kind of know what you're going to look at to know what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then communication is also like, what are the communication platforms that you're going to try to use? What are the meeting frequencies? Getting all of that set up as early as possible, making sure, your budget and your level of effort for each person is already as clear as you can from the beginning. It's all going to change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, there was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember it at the moment.
Oh, that's okay. It's pretty thorough, and I appreciate that. I was thinking that collaborative work, as good as it is, also tends to slow down the productivity, though, because you have to have all these meetings. You have to have a joint decision-making process. So it can tend to slow things down. And while that's beneficial, ultimately, because there's a higher consensus and larger buy-in, I was thinking that maybe it also reduces the productivity level because it just slows it down initially. Like it takes a longer time to build. Once it's going, then it's good. But so that's all I was thinking
Yeah, it's a good
that
way
whole
to
time.
think about it, because I would say that you do have to consider front loading. You have to think
Right.
that up front, the more you put into that planning process and setting up those systems well, and recognizing that there are going to be pause points, and they're
Mm-hmm.
coming too.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have those pause points where you're going to reflect and then say, well, where do the course corrections need to occur? It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
what we do in our work with our clients too. Like that is what we're helping them to do with what we help them to learn from. We do it ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, yes, in the short term, more work. In the longer term, smoother sailing.
Right. Well, so how did you get to work with Encompass? I mean, I know from my own knowledge of you, you've had quite a journey to get there. So tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, well, I guess like many women, I've had a windy career path. It hasn't been a straight line. But I never felt like I was off the path, even
Right.
though I didn't work in the field I expected to go into, even. That is, since a young child, I knew I wanted to work to help the earth, particularly animals and endangered wildlife. And my undergraduate degree was in conservation and natural resource management because I wanted to learn how to better incorporate human development with nature. How to help us coexist better,
Yeah.
and to be a voice for wildlife that couldn't speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see that by going eventually this path I've taken, where I'm actually working in international development, I'm actually doing a lot of those things still.
Yeah.
And what's more important, and I'll get into, is the skill bases have been the things that I've been developing over time. So, it's not necessarily only the content you learn in your undergraduate and graduate studies that sends you toward whatever path you end up being on. It's actually the skills themselves that can help to determine that. So even in the late 70s and early 80s, when I was in college, it was really clear. We were still using mainframes and punch cards to actually
Good Lord.
do anything. But I could see that technology and modeling were critical to this effort that I was interested in. I created a degree. It earned me a scholarship.
Yeah.
With a major in ecology and a minor in computer science and modeling, because people weren't doing that sort of thing together.
Wow. I didn't realize you had a computer science and minor.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, thanks.
Learn something new every day.
Exactly. And at the time, it wasn't clear how much that could grow or would grow, but you knew that you needed it because ecologists were interested early on in moving from a closed system thinking, like you're thinking about with a rocket, developing a rocket or physics, physics problems, to these open, complex systems when we're working due to the intersection of humans and the environment.
Oh, okay.
You've got all these inputs coming from everywhere, and you've got all these interrelated feedback loops and things happening in a system. So you had to think about systems from the start, and you had to think about, well, if we're going to try to make this change, how is it going to affect everything else?
Right.
And you have to forecast and predict. So you're using these models to do that. Yeah, hope thankfully, computer technology, gave us some ability to move forward in areas where we would have probably made even worse mistakes. I guess I like to think it's that case.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And so you've said that you
So I
did
was
this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was applying evaluation concepts and logic modeling and theories of change. These are all parts of what we do when we're developing programs and evaluating programs. I was doing this very early on because I was doing it in my ecological work, and then later when I was doing education and working in conservation education, I was using logic models and actually testing what were the important components of logic models that to affect program success. So that helped.
Mm,
But like many people, as I said, I continue to implement, adapt, and hone the thinking, learning, and teaming skills that I developed in college, even if I was moving away sometimes from the content.
hmm.
And they provided me with really good tools. But like a lot of people, we had been late in the baby game, but my husband and I had been trying to have a child for a long time. And the day I learned my dissertation
I know.
went through with the thesis clerk was the day I learned I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And we had an intention to move to either Australia or Europe for a postdoc, but that just didn't make sense
Right.
because we were thinking we might be having a high risk pregnancy here. So we stayed in the States and decided, we were going to figure out domestically where we wanted to live and raise our kids and find jobs there. So both of us left our situation. I was easy to leave mine. I finished my doctorate. My husband was finishing his postdoc, so it all worked out okay. But as a result, we ended up moving initially to Vermont, later to Maryland, and this career led me in other amazing routes.
Mm.
I co-led a statewide farm to school program in Vermont. I worked at home part-time to consult with, while the kids were little, on a system-wide agricultural small business and education program in Maine, and also with extension programs across the country. I worked for universities in Vermont and Maryland, developing evaluation and reporting systems for land use, agriculture, 4-H, nutrition education programs for limited income
Sheesh.
families. I developed organization-wide self-assessment and reporting systems for university organizations and the Peace Corps. And as the kids were getting older, I was managing evaluations and developing evaluation capacity for Peace Corps programs in Eastern Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Central and North America. So this was all before I came to Encompass. And then after we had to come home from living in Eswatini, what's then called Swaziland in Southern Africa, on a medical evacuation, my life changed a bit again. These life situations are
Right.
kind of what drive our career sometimes. So when we moved back, we had to make some sudden quick changes. We couldn't live in our home in Annapolis. We had to move to another place. And I was coming up on something that the Peace Corps has, which is a 5-year rule where they only want you to work for 5 years, 2.5-year terms. And then you need to be away from the Peace Corps for as long as you worked there before you can come back, because they want to keep things fresh. And that's been the way was developed since 1962, I want to say, when Shriver actually put that rule in place.
Interesting. Yeah.
So then I said, okay, I'm going to change my LinkedIn profile to whatever it is, seeking a job or something. And
Desperately seeking work.
yeah, and but in this case, I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
Within a week, I received a recruitment request
Oh, wow.
to Encompass. I didn't know what Encompass was. I'd never heard of it. I'd never worked in the private company space, private industry, and so I didn't know what I was getting myself into even when I interviewed. And after they have a very long interview process, you interview with 3 different times. I think, yeah, in my case, it was 3, and anyway, very welcoming environment, and they hired me. So that's how I started working for Encompass.
Wow. And I didn't realize the background that you have with the valuation is so extensive. I just didn't recognize some of the things you were talking about. It was pretty cool. I remembered the 4-H thing, but some of the other things you were talking about was really
Hmm.
cool.
Cool.
Um, and so throughout this process that you've been working, I was wondering, when did you decide that being a leader was what you wanted to do? Because I think,
Yeah,
if
that's an
I recall
interesting
correctly,
question.
I think it was like there was a decision you made about really wanting to be a leader. And so
Well, I'll take that question kind of 2 ways
yeah,
because I think we're all leaders or potentially leaders. That
true.
is truly how I feel. And I've never felt like I wasn't leading in some way. I was
Hmm.
either doing cutting edge work, working as a mentor to someone,
Mm,
working as a catalyst for change and progress within an organization.
yeah,
None of those, like all of those, were done at various times when I didn't have something that would be referred to necessarily as a leadership position.
right.
So I think that these things kind of distinctly, they. I think of everybody, it has the potential to be a leader in whatever role they're playing.
Nice.
Um, and I work with people now at all levels of our organization that I would call leaders.
Nice. Yeah.
But I currently direct projects and teams and supervise staff. So currently I would be considered in a leadership position. And I do recall feeling around the time I was leaving Encompass, like leaving Peace Corps, I wasn't going to be seeking a job that didn't allow me to do more mentoring and that didn't allow me to facilitate change as much. So I had a chance to do it there, luckily, but that isn't normal for that level that I was at.
I see.
So I was lucky that when I came into this organization, that they wanted to have me work in a leadership position. But I'll say even that changed because our company grew exponentially during the time I came on board at that point and then after it. So when I say exponential, I mean, this curve is like crazy. There were 3 of us in our evaluation unit at the time. And it is now about 35 or 40 people in our unit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That is
and
huge growth.
that's 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So as a result, my role didn't change that much, my position. But what I and then but I've been asked to do more,
Right.
and I have been given raises,
Right.
but um so I've been given more leadership roles within that same, just position.
Hmm.
But when it comes to what I think of when I think of myself as a leader even now, is I'm a facilitator. I think of my role facilitating organizational change, self and team directed actions, growth, capacity strengthening, and change or adaptation to change.
Hmm.
And leadership, both when I held a role defined that way and as a word in itself, feels lonely and hard to me. It feels
Huh.
like leadership, like if you lead, you're up there and others are down here. I Facilitation feels collaborative to me
I see.
and fun. And maybe
Yeah.
that means I'm only going to lead in certain ways. Who knows? But that's kind of how I've internalized that.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. And I really appreciate your definition there. And I love the distinction you made because I do agree that we're all leaders. So I really appreciate that encompassing that we can lead change for others without being in a leadership role. We can lead from within. We can lead, we lead ourselves first of all, which is one of the things I think a lot of people just poo poo and say whatever. But you lead a change to you allow your you lead yourself by waking up in the morning and then getting dressed and making decisions that move you forward. And I think that a lot of people put that as something small, but I think that there are a lot of people who don't lead in that respect. And so there is the people who, let's say, get up in the morning and decide to exercise first thing in the morning or meditate first thing in the morning or something like that. They're leading themselves in a different path, along a different path than other people. It doesn't mean that it just leadership to me is something so much bigger. And I appreciate you bringing in that distinction. And then there's the leadership within a business, which is little different. um, but I'm curious about how you feel about it being up there versus like some hierarchy that you're up there and you're isolated or
Yeah, and
yeah.
maybe I'm kind of using the wrong thinking there because maybe it has more to do with the position of executive director, not so much that you're a leader, you know. And because I think about this, I volunteered for a number of years as a Girl Scout leader,
Hmm.
and we have girls of our young ages, and we see them move up to older ages, and our role is facilitating their growth and their development into leaders.
Right.
And so that still fits into my definition then. By the time they're done, they're leaders. But do they have a role in a company that's called a leadership role? No. They're all leading their own lives, as you say, and um, ideally change in some way or
Right.
movement in some way, improvement of some kind,
Hmm.
um, thinking like a leader,
Hmm.
thinking that way. And that's why that word facilitation works for me, because you're facilitating change. That's so collaborative to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that it's empowering. It sounds like
Yeah,
that's
and
the
we
word
don't
it
work in
comes.
isolation when we're
Yeah,
making these changes.
yeah, yeah. And so what have you learned about leadership throughout your career that because I'm, now that you've made this distinction of definition, so what have you learned?
Yeah, well, importantly, that collaborative piece comes up because I know it sounds cliche, but relationship building is so key. Doesn't mean you need to know everything about someone or them about you. It means you care to learn what they want you to know about them, and they want you to care about them,
Mm,
and that you're able to share some of your own foibles and vulnerabilities. That relationship building builds trust and builds the ability to make decisions and fail and succeed together,
mm,
and not feel like you're treading on toes, but also not feel like you're afraid of your own shadow.
mm-hmm,
You know, so relationship building is key. Uh, It's not enough though. To have mutual respect needed to forge, strong working relationships, comes through processes, responsiveness to communication, setting and maintaining clear expectations and boundaries for
that's a
yourself
biggie.
and for
Mm-hmm,
colleagues and supervisors. Yeah, supervisees. Even the people you're supervising. But setting a high bar and modeling is important. I'm not saying
mm-hmm,
it's not, but also modeling and living a balanced life is crucial. And I've seen this both done well and not done well. And I've done it well myself and not done it well myself in my career. And without it, your employees will burn out,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and you'll lose the big investment that you put in to someone you value
mm-hmm,
and cherish as a colleague or employee. So, in our fast-paced work environment, where I work now in Encompass, this is something we work on a lot. And as I said, we sometimes do it well, sometimes don't. But having strong organizational systems in place is one of the things that helps. It's a necessary, minimum for attaining some of this balance.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's important to hold yourself to it and to check in that others feel they have the ability to maintain that balance. And we do that every check-in, every week.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's interesting. And so when you do a check-in, what does that look like?
I don't know if you've ever heard of Trello.
I
But
have.
Trello is a
Yeah.
platform that
Yeah.
just allows you to organize projects,
Mm-hmm.
We use that for our check-ins. We have a board that is only shared between an employer and an employee, so it's only shared between the two of us, and we can put anything we want there. But what we tend to do is put our agenda items, like what we'd want to talk about that week. And this usually comes from the employee. That is the plan. And then if there's something specific I need to include in there, like who knows, it could be new policy or something that I just wanted to check in on to make sure
Mm.
things are okay, or maybe correct something that came through a different way.
Or
So those
follow
are
up.
also gone. Maybe follow up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as part of this agenda, though it's now implicit because we do it all the time, is a check-in on how are things. We talk enough. We're so collaborative. Like I said, we talk enough. We kind of know some of the things happening. But if you don't do that check-in, you might not know that someone's dog died that weekend,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that this is affecting how they're seeing everything at this
Oh, yeah.
or
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily something that comes up in conversations when you're having even these during COVID-19. We're having some of these virtual coffee chats or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's the kind of thing that needs to be given some space, and so we make sure that that happens in those check-ins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and
And then
to
I'm
that,
sorry, and then we might say, do you need some time? Do you need to take a few hours? Do you need to take some time, at the end of the week or now, um, with your family, or with, to mourn, whatever it is.
yeah. And to that extent, what if somebody needs a week to really get through something like that? What does that look like?
Well, like many organizations, with COVID-19, we have the FFCRA, we have the COVID response family leave that's available to people to support their children or to support mourning a family member that has been lost, that sort of thing. There's nothing official about losing a pet, I will say,
Right.
but um, but we have leave time. We also, like many organizations, in some ways, have some flexibility with time. Like we have these things to get done, but if you need time at this hour of the day to be
Right.
with family, we can do this another time. We can
Okay.
bank that and do it. So we try to use both flexibility in our leave policy to make that work.
Nice. Nice. So it sounds like there's a really strong approach to leadership in and responsiveness and empathy for the staff and all those characteristics of leadership. And you were talking about modeling, and that's such a big deal, that if we're modeling the right behavior, that means that we're adhering to and making sure that our staff and employees feel valued and feel like their input is critical, and and so there, that flexibility that you're talking about is so important to meet that.
Yeah, and that buildup of trust, because through that mechanism, really supports strong productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So you really don't have much reason to doubt anything because you've built that up. And that's part of that appreciative inquiry approach, is we're all seeking the same things. We have a shared vision of where we're trying to go. And everybody, through that appreciative inquiry, you're trying to envision for each individual too, how they want to achieve their aims within that bigger aim. And by using that process in these conversations, you support giving people the benefit of the doubt, which is always very important in trust building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you were talking earlier about this balance and the work-life balance, and you were saying how they sometimes don't do it right and sometimes don't do it wrong, and that kind of a thing. And I was just wondering, in your own life, how have you managed your work-life balance?
Well,
Or
you've heard
not.
about this a few times.
Yeah. Or not.
Because this has proved to be a really tough thing to do in my
Yeah.
current business and my role. It's something we work on, like I said, in our business a lot, and we're not perfect by any means. This is a competitive space that we're in with lots of other companies seeking contracts from the same organizations, and there are many contracts out there, but there are big ones, and sometimes a lot of people are going for those. So we often offer a lot for a budget that will be seen favorably, and this affects how we need to allot our time, and that's crucial to all work and business.
Mm.
I also live far from my job and for where my office is, and have had a number of family issues over the years that have felt like they've created obstacles to routines and personal time. And that's probably not unusual either for a lot of
Mm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm providing this as context because over the 3 years that I've worked at Encompass, I've been a good employee. I've worked up to having more time available to work from home, and I had just gotten peaked at that right about the time of COVID-19, and
Oh,
now we're all working remotely, the whole
right.
company, right? So this was a relatively easy switch for Encompass because we had already, as I noted, had people working around the world and had systems in place. Our literally our work involved a lot of learning and sharing and collaborating remotely.
Mm.
So it was an easy switch to manage. And I say that not that it wasn't painful in some ways and to some parts of our company, say our financial system, which had been used to working every day, all the time together.
Oh, yeah.
But it was still much more doable, an easier switch than some other companies, I'm sure. But back to your question, I found it to be much easier to productively balance long days of work with personal and family time now that we are working remotely all the time.
Mm.
I have more dinners with the family. I cook more. I have more personal time for, self-care, exercise, baking, gardening, everything. My daughter and I can more easily maintain a routine for workouts together with our son home too, because he's not in college at the time right now. It's been a blessing in disguise because we have more time to discuss things he would normally be discussing with his roommate or
Right, right,
other
right.
college buddies. So my husband and I go bird watching, take more
Oh,
walks,
nice,
things
nice.
like that. So we don't always have this luxury though, and I want to make this clear that when I had longer commutes, balance was tough. I would call I'm trying to tell you some of the coping mechanisms. I would call family members, as you know, on long rides home.
Mm-hmm.
I had about a 4-hour commute back and forth.
Yeah.
So I would catch up with news and radio or listen to blogs or books on the way in to work because it was super early.
Mm-hmm.
So couldn't call a family at that point.
Well, you could have. We wouldn't have answered, but yeah.
Exactly. And but when I'd get home, I'd be exhausted and I'd feel like I had just enough time for dinner, if I even made it to dinner, before like petting the dogs, hugging the family, throwing in some laundry, and falling into bed,
Right,
and then starting all over the next day.
right.
So it's definitely made a big difference. But balance is always an issue. And I would say, even with that, there's still late nights, weekends that I'm working, but just that overall ability to plan for when I
Mm.
have time free is easier without the long commute.
Yeah, yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, 2 hours one way, 2 hours back, that's a long commute, and it's in some ways a lost time, not so much lost, because you can be productive and do things, but lost time for you and your family and things like that, and that, must you must be paying a price to some degree, having to make that choice. And I wonder how many women have to make that choice. eh, You know,
I think people have to make that choice. Women, yes, women, especially when the children are young.
mm,
That time is so precious. Um, we made some decisions early on to, I can talk about some of that, but that affected my own career path and my ability to have perhaps, if money was the issue, made more money at an earlier age, and maybe been in a different leadership capacity now than I am. Um, and I think many women make those choices. Many families now even make those choices. Uh, but I think this is in some ways a uniquely American issue.
Interesting. Yeah. And so you think other cultures around the world don't have this issue, or?
I think there are many examples of countries where um, there are bounds put into place. In Germany, they've made it illegal in many cases for you to even email employees on the weekend, because they make a point of saying you have a work week and you have a weekend.
Mhm.
In other parts of the world, it is expected. There is a 6-week summer vacation, and there is a normal workday. There's an expected level of productivity. I guess if you think about it ecologically, there's a bit of a runaway competition that's happened. If you think about runaway competition, that's things like peacocks getting the big feathers, animals getting antlers that are so big that they can't even carry them around. But because the opposite sex is attracted to that and feeds on it, it becomes a runaway situation. Well, it seems like in the United States, in some ways, we have a runaway competition situation
Mm.
where we've moved beyond where it's really balanced,
Mm.
where we can balance ourselves through the way we've decided to work.
Well, and I wonder, because I know that, is it that, or is it it's so frustrating for me because there's the inflation rates, there's all this stuff. But when we were growing up, I recall most families had one person working and one person not working in general in families. And now it feels like minimally both parents have to work just to support financially a house, or to pay the rent or to pay the bills. And so that has adjusted so dramatically. And is it that the wages have not kept up, causing both parents to have to work? Or is it, what are the mechanisms that have caused both parents to be forced to work in general, just
I
to
hope
support?
this is something that you can explore with myself, perhaps, and other people that you talk to over a longer period. This is a deeper discussion than I think
Yeah.
we'd be able to do on an interview, but I do think that we need to look at um, materially what people see as normal now versus what they saw as normal when we were growing up, if you want to
That's
use
true
that as the
too. Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
So I think if you looked at some things, I think that there are some real imbalances. We've seen that real
Mm.
imbalances in terms of how much some people are able to make, and whether they have the ability to have the same opportunities as other people to move into positions that can pay more. So yes, I think there is that problem. I also think that there is a material expectation now in America uh, that affects that runaway situation.
Mm.
Put it that way.
Mhm. Mhm. And so what do you think that, kind of going back a little to this leadership thing, what do you think that some of the challenges female leaders encounter, you being one of them, have you experienced in your own life and your own career throughout, barriers to growth, or, what are some of the challenges that you think female leaders encounter?
Right. Well, I already mentioned the one that had to do with child rearing. I can't say in my case in my case, it might be a little bit different than some of the norms you hear about. I'm not sure. But at first, my husband and we were both making decisions around child rearing that affected both of our career trajectories so
Mhm.
that we had more time when our children were younger to be with them. We were practicing attachment parenting when they were very young, and we were, I nursed for a very long time. I was able to work in positions that where I worked for 75% time. Then I even consulted from home so that I had that time with the children. And that definitely affected a career trajectory. There's no doubt
Mhm.
about it.
Mhm.
But at other times when we've chosen to move to Africa with our children, my husband left his career. And then
Mhm.
because we came on in a medical situation, it affected his career. So I'm not sure how normal that situation is, for,
Right,
for
right.
people, but
Really?
it's
No, not everybody goes to Africa?
not everybody goes to Africa, or not everybody makes those same choices.
Yeah,
Yeah, but there are choices we make, and we,
yeah.
we have to recognize, I guess, that there is a trade-off to the choices we make throughout. We had a lot of time when our kids were young with our kids. I don't regret a minute of it, right? It's, that was the choice I made. Wondered if I regretted going to Africa because it changed so much, but now looking back on that, no regrets. So, we have to, sometimes we need to give things time too to understand where they fit into the
Right,
bigger picture.
right.
um, yeah, but that's one of the things that I think. Uh, again, I may be struggling a bit to say it's only women, but I do think it sometimes affects women differently. Jeff was not nursing the children. To nurse the children, I had to have more time with the children. I couldn't pump all the time and leave
Right.
it in the freezer and that sort of thing, with the amount that we were. Yeah, and I really wanted to be with the kids, so there's just that choice.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in my case, and with some of the other women I've worked with, we have energy to push boundaries in our field. We are boundary pushers. It's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, I see that so much with whistleblowers. So many whistleblowers are women. So many courageous people in the world calling out injustices are women. Um, we are nurturers. We
Mm.
nurture, we mentor, we help other people really well. We don't necessarily self promote that well.
Yeah. Well, that's been a long-standing issue, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you hear about, catfighting or competing of women, and certainly there is some of that. But I almost think, like, to what end, if you're not also a good self promoter, we're really not. Um, I'm speaking for myself. I feel really good about what I've been able to do for others, that I've worked with. But I'm guilty of not necessarily, that self care piece, doing as much as I could to promote myself. And there's an aspect that feels just really selfish about that. And
Hmm.
I don't know how much of that is female or how much of that is just me, because I grew up with a situation where you can feel guilt quite easily.
Well, no,
um,
but I
yeah.
think that it's true. I think women in general struggle with that because I think it's a consistent statement that w- women can't, like, there's this machoism or male aspect that kind of can, by by saying what they've accomplished and what they've achieved, they can move further ahead and faster. And there's also a distinction in language that I think I've noticed, and I really notice it a lot more now that I'm more aware of it, is guys, when they're talking about their record, will say I. Women will say we, and that automatically diminishes their level of self promotion because they're saying we the team did accomplish A, B, and C. Where men will say I did this, I did that, and they didn't do it alone. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I also wonder if some of the decisions I've made are, in some ways I risk took, like going to Africa or something, right? I risk
Hmm.
took in some other career changes I've made. But in terms of risking that relationship with your supervisor,
Yeah.
by asking for something, when I'm the main breadwinner, I'm maybe more afraid than a male to make that risk. Like they're not as concerned with that relationship, perhaps. They're just
Yeah.
like, I'm going to be okay. We're going to drink a beer after, whatever. I don't know, but they will push that envelope. And I have been less of a risk taker that way.
Yeah, yeah, and that also speaks to something that I had read a while ago about women attorneys. I was reading about this, that a woman attorney, a male attorney would go in and they'd say for the interview, "Where do you expect to be in 5 years?" "Oh, I expect to be partner, and I expect raises and increases and promotions along the route." Right, and the women will go in and they'll say something like, "Well, I expect to still be here and have a family," and they're not thinking about laying down this expectation. And so when it comes to promotions and stuff like that, the women are often overlooked because the men have indicated, I expect that promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's on their radar to give that guy the promotion, and women hesitate. And
Could
so
be. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm, yep, it could be.
And it might not. I don't know. But let me just ask you, did you want to say something else?
I'll say one other thing
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
women helping women. I think we could do more
Oh,
to
yeah.
help each other and to be kinder. Even within my own organization, we're a women owned company. We're run by women. We're going to even have some turnover in senior management that involves women. As I said, it's a growing company. But I've still seen that um, even there's a greater tendency to promote the men in the
Yeah.
organization. And
Yeah.
it fascinates me. Um, within the organization,
Mhm.
bringing women in to the organization, yes, but I've seen just a little bit slower the trajectory of women moving up than I have the men.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many men. So, it might be a pretty small sample I'm talking about to really be comparing, but I'm just
Right.
pointing that out.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a kindness, just, that like we're hearing about with Black Lives Matter, that there are all these, you can call them microaggressions, but the main thing is there are insults and assaults verbally kind of happening all the time to certain people in
Mm.
the world. And if somebody is faced with that all the time, then to build trust and
Mm.
have that relationship that's so crucial to the work we do, um, additional kindness is needed, in my view.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I kind of think about this for women too. We too, whether we're doing it to ourselves, self-battering, or other people, it's kind of like learning how women work or something. We need more kindness, and we need
Yeah.
to be more kind to our colleagues and to the people that we work for and work under, or that work under us, or however you put that, but everybody we're working with. I'm not saying that men don't need it, white men, and I put that as sort of white men in this situation. But the white male colleagues, they're still by and large setting the rules
Mhm.
of the game and of the way businesses operate and the rules they work under, um, the contracts we get, those kinds of things. So um, I think that there is something to be said for company-wide nurturing,
Mm. Definitely,
a
definitely.
female quality.
A female quality. Well, or men could learn how to be more nurturing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, I hear you. And so, just curious, shifting gears just a little, what about working at Encompass inspires you?
Every day I work with amazing colleagues. So that in itself is incredibly inspiring. The clients we work with on projects, there's so many experts in the world that just are doing so much to try to help to improve the lives of others and to improve the earth. And in one way or another, that's incredibly inspiring. The people who work at this company complement each other, and that's just, energy producing and inspiring
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
We have a diverse group of women and men who bring a lot of perspectives to the table. We strive to improve all the time. Just seeing that striving is inspiring. We seek to be more diverse, more equitable, more supportive and facilitative, more appreciative, more grateful,
Mm.
and that is inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the other thing is that the people at Encompass, in part because of the culture, they're authentic human beings, and most of them bring that authenticity to the table every day. Where this isn't yet happening, where people don't feel validated yet by the systems or don't feel completely supported, we're striving to work and make that better, and that's really thrilling. But the other thing is, the work itself is super inspiring. It's super like it's. I feel like I get to be a catalyst for change. I
Yeah.
get to work creatively to address challenges every day.
Hmm.
I get to develop my skills and refine skills as well as mentor others every day. I get to work with people around the world. Um, there's so much ongoing learning that happens in my job.
Hmm.
Uh, there's so many different perspectives you get to hear and get to help blend and find consensus around um, towards shared action steps. That is super gratifying work
Oh,
and
yeah.
inspiring.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I highly recommend this field, by the way, just as a plug. Evaluation as a field of study, it did not exist when I was going through college.
Right.
But now that's not the case. Now there is a field of evaluation. People can do undergrad and grad degrees in it.
Right.
And the work is super fun. You get to work in so many different areas. For somebody who has like an insatiable curiosity, it's a
Right.
great, great field.
Yeah. And I was thinking when you talked about that, yeah, there are evaluation degrees, and now data systems analysis and data is becoming such a big component of growth for business, even. And so it's
Data
very,
analytics.
yeah, data analytics has become a huge, huge field. So even data analytics can get you into the mindset of that curiosity that you're talking about, that consistent curiosity of trying to figure out how to promote or produce or advance a particular industry or um, topic, you know.
And it's marrying that information with these collaborative processes that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what's exciting and ideally is where we feel like we really are moving the needle.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that sounds good. And so, what guidance do you think you could provide about managing the various aspects of your role?
Well, I think I talked about some of these already, but
Yeah,
responsiveness is needed.
yeah,
But then one of the things that, again, this comes down to this balancing. Not being overly responsive is also important because that not only leads to your burnout, but you're just over communicating.
hmm,
And it doesn't necessarily serve to build the capacity and independence of other people to do their work, right? So that's one thing. It's like, and by all means, in my view, find a quick chat. If you're not getting things resolved very quickly through emails, email is not a platform that encourages compromise and collaboration. It can
email
serve, but it's
stinks.
not ideal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we have so many ways to remotely chat now. Let's
Hmm.
find that way to do the quick chat and nip things in the bud before they get out of hand. That's something that has been a very valuable learning for me. And
Yeah.
fortunately, the technology works for that around the world now. And then reliability and resourcefulness is also really important. Everyday reliability, sets the stage for good work all around. And then additionally, challenges that occur in our jobs. That person who can be counted on to be there when something goes wrong and can be resourceful and find, if not the fix, the reference for the fix. That person's invaluable to the company. They're
Hmm.
gonna, really be needed. And I mentioned kindness. Kindness is so important that when we come to our work appreciatively and treat our colleagues with kindness, it just makes the day go by so nicely,
Oh,
so
yeah.
fast, so productively. You know, it's returned to you in hearts, it
Mm,
just,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And another thing is like finding the organizational tools that work. Our company has some, but there's an array to work with. And we just this last week we had basically a chat, a company chat about, well, what organizational tools do you work on to help with you with your daily organization? And the array of tools people uses and how they use them together is incredibly wide, and every single one fits, different people differently. So nobody's using just one.
Right, right.
Everybody's using multiple ones, and
Mhm.
how they're using them together to complement really is interesting,
Mm.
because we're all using them differently, but to good ends. The
Yeah.
Yeah, so putting those systems in place is really important. We are still working on, for example, recruitment and talent management, trying to get that system boosted up, so we have a better, quicker ability to kind of see who are the consultants that we have already on our roster who are good for this situation and that situation, so we can really quickly launch and move up, set up a project. Those kinds of things we're still working on, but a lot of these systems we have put in place well. And yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's good. And so I'm going to ask you a really tough question. So, what do you wish you knew earlier in your career that you know now you didn't know then?
A lot of the small things, like I wish I'd known to take typing in high school.
Yeah.
I'm still like a three fingers each hand typist. Another thing, that I think is something that's come to me is nothing you learn is wasted. So
Mm.
if there's something I'd love people to know, nothing you learn in your life is wasted. It all comes together at some point. There is a reason.
Even your personal experiences.
Personal
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are wonderful. That is something I did not always know early on. I had people I liked, but people in general were often seen as the problem ecologically, the problem, you know, for mistreating animals or something like that.
Mm.
And it's only as I've grown in my career that I've seen the more general value that people bring, um, collectively.
Mm. Hmm.
I now see the collective power of people to create good. And that's something that, I'd love to have known earlier. I think I would have been a better relationship builder earlier on had I
Hmm.
had that thinking.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And so, what's been then the most rewarding aspect of your career?
Most rewarding is, gosh, there's so many things. Um, Certainly learning, the
Mm.
continual learning journey. Um, and as I said, some of the things that I just described to you are part of that joy that's rewarding, is, things that I didn't think mattered before, I now see matter. And that's been really a joy. And seeing how what we do for decision making, um, what I do in my work, to just seeing how it can make people happy,
Hmm.
how I can bring joy to others through that work I do, that is very rewarding. Yeah.
Mm.
And gaining insights. In a way, everything I do is like a big community of practice. We're all practicing together. We're all trying things. We're all learning that some things are working, some things are not, course correcting, um, taking on new challenges, discussing those, working through what could be done better the next time. To me, it's all part of a community of practice, and that's very rewarding.
Hmm. Nice. Nice. And I've written here something. What advice would you have for any current or aspiring female leaders listening to this program? What would you encourage for them?
Well, I'll start with, like, if you aren't sure about something, if you're floundering or something, seek help. Like, reach out. Don't go it alone and just
Hmm.
continue floundering. I seek help all the time. I talk to people. This isn't working. Wait, what do you think I should do? I'm having an issue here. I highly recommend people talking to you. I have learned you're a really good listener and you know how to ask the right questions. You facilitate, healthy dialogues, and I gain great insights.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I
Um,
think you bring up something really important that I think in general, people feel like they can't make mistakes. And they feel like if they ask a question, they look stupid or like they didn't know enough. And I think the reality is that no one is the expert. No one has all the information. And if we let go of that, I have to know it all crap, and and we share that growth journey together, that in fact we gain together rather than feeling like we have to go it alone. It's so isolating to try and build yourself by yourself. And so by working with others, um, I think it's such a key. It's such a key to be willing to ask for help is such a big part of that.
I think it's really important. And I'm going to agree with what you say, and I'm going to take it one other step in the next thing I would suggest. That is, people do have some expertise. Different people bring different expertise.
True.
I think it is important to recognize we do have expertise in the room, but nobody is an expert of all things.
Right.
And nobody is not an expert in something, their own life, at least. So we're all bringing different perspectives through our experiences, as you point out, that have value. And but most importantly to what you're saying is we're not alone. And people want to help other people. In general, people want to help other people. They don't want to go it alone themselves either. And they're going to feel that reward, just like I was saying, from helping the person that day. So asking for help. I have people at every level of our company that I go to for help. And I'm not saying it's the simple things. It's sometimes the big things. I'll go to somebody who is a supervisee of mine and I'll say, I just don't know how to tackle this one. What do you think? And not only do I think through that process, I'm not saying I do it intentionally this way, but not only through that process do I learn something. I think I've helped their day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I'm not like doing it for that purpose per se, but I'm just saying, like, don't forget that you could help their day.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And the other thing is, I'd say, if you know what you want to do, take the chance and do it. Learn what you need to do. I do want to say this about, evaluation in every field. There are fundamentals. Don't skip the fundamentals. Don't think you can be an instant expert. Do get the fundamentals. But then don't let having to be perfect keep you from moving forward. You don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to get going. And know you've got those fundamentals under you, and then get going. And then you're going to learn a lot of that through the rest of the journey. So I would say then look for every path you can to follow what it is you love and do it, because whatever you do that you love is going to do the most to contribute and benefit the world, in the long run.
Yeah.
And always, I'd say at the beginning and the end of each day, recall what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
To be doing the work you're doing.
Yeah. And what you've done right.
What you've done well, what you've learned from,
Right.
who you got to interact with, what this might do, the potential it has, whatever you're grateful for, the place you worked that day, the person you saw. It can be the littlest thing, it can be the biggest thing, but try to remember what you're grateful for.
Well, so if people wanted to learn more about Encompass, how can they do that?
We have a website, Encompass.
.com? .org?
I think it's .com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Encompass.com. We are on LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
We are on Facebook. And we on our website, you will see some really great resources. We do put out blogs. We're also members. Currently, our president is also the president. Our CEO is also the president of American Evaluation Association.
Oh, wow.
Actually,
okay.
She's now a board member. Last year she was president. This year she's a board member. So,
Okay.
Sorry, I got that wrong.
Well, so she's ex post facto or whatever.
She was president.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. And her name's Tessie Katsambas. She's also one of the people who helped to socialize appreciative inquiry into the evaluation field. So very valuable contributor to the evaluation field more recently, and works a lot with other people important to that field, like Michael Quinn Patton and Bob Williams, who are helping move that field forward. So we are highly involved with the American Evaluation Association. I serve as a chair to one of the topical interest groups. Another person in our organization serves as a chair to a different one. So we're very involved there. And certainly just call me or email me, knorris at
.com.
World.
Compass World.
Encompassworld.com.
So is the
Oh my gosh, I've got to look it up. I don't even recall. I haven't, you always have these things like already set up on your computer.
Yeah.
So let me get to that right now.
I'm just wondering if the website is encompassworld.com.
We have a SharePoint site too. I think it's encompassworld.com.
Okay. So the email is knorris at encompassworld.com, and
Yes.
the website is encompassworld.com.
That's right.
Great. So we're doing good.
Thank you.
Slip that one in there. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kim. You are amazing. I'm just in awe of your myriad skills, knowledge, talents, expertise, and you inspire me to want to continue to learn and grow. So thank you so much. And
well, likewise, I just want to say thank you for putting me at ease. I'm not a natural interviewer, so thanks.
And next week, stay tuned to In Awe to listen to another inspiring woman. I'm Laura Wagenknecht, your host of In Awe, Inspiring and Advancing Women's Excellence. Here is hoping that you continue to inspire all of us and remain excellent. So stay tuned to WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m.